We live in a world that moves fast, one that rarely gives us permission to slow down, to breathe, or to simply be alone. And when it does, many of us don't know what to do with that silence. We feel awkward, anxious, even afraid. Why? Because somewhere along the way, we began to confuse being alone with being lonely. But they are not the same. Solitude, my friends, is not a punishment. It is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is not something to run from, but something to embrace. Solitude is a sacred space. It is the quiet place where your soul meets, where your heart speaks without interruption, where the noise of the world fades, so you can finally hear what really matters. You see, loneliness is not about being without people. It's about being without connection. True connection, first and foremost to yourself, and then to something higher. There are people in crowded rooms tonight who feel more alone than the person walking by themselves in the park. There are people surrounded by laughter, by friends and family, who feel an emptiness deep within their spirit. And then there are others sitting quietly at home with a book or walking alone under the stars who feel whole, because they've learned that being alone can be a place of strength, not of sorrow. We were not created to be anxious every time the room gets quiet. We were not designed to be dependent on noise, on validation, on a scroll of opinions to feel alive. We were made in the image of a God who created in silence, who worked in solitude, but who calls us to be still and know. Not just to know Him, but to know ourselves. But it takes courage to learn that difference. Courage to sit with your own thoughts without running to distraction. Courage to face the quiet and let it refine you rather than frighten you. Some of us have lived so long avoiding solitude that the idea of sitting in a room alone feels unbearable. And yet, it is in that very place that healing begins. It's in that space where you realize you are not missing anything, prepared for something. Solitude is a teacher. It doesn't shout like the world, it whispers like the wind. It speaks not to your ears, but to your heart. It's in solitude where you start to recognize the voice that was always inside you. Beneath the expectations, the performance, the pretending. When you begin to walk with yourself instead of running from yourself, you begin to notice the parts of you that need grace, not judgment. You begin to build trust with your own soul. And I want to say this gently, but firmly: if you don't make peace with solitude, you will always fear being alone. You will fill your life with noise just to escape yourself. You will stay in relationships not out of love, but out of fear. You will look for company not because you're full and want to share, but because you're empty and want to be filled. That's not connection. That's dependence. That's loneliness in disguise. But when you learn to sit in solitude, when you allow yourself to rest in your own presence, something shifts. The fear loses its grip. The silence begins to soothe you instead of scare you. And slowly, you start to feel a new kind of strength. A strength not rooted in how many people surround you, but in how anchored you are within. A strength that says, even if I walk alone today, I am not lost. Even if no one texts me back tonight, I am still enough. Even if the world is quiet, my soul's not abandoned. You begin to realize that the presence of others is beautiful, yes, but it's not what gives you worth. Your value was never tied to a crowd. Your peace was never meant to come from applause. You are already whole, you are already held. And so tonight, I invite you not just to tolerate solitude, but to cherish it, to welcome it as a friend, to let it teach you. Because when you learn the difference between being alone and being lonely, you begin to live differently. You begin to walk into rooms not desperate for attention, but grounded in purpose. You begin to love others not because you need them to fill a gap, but because your cup is already overflowing. You begin, at last, to understand that you were never truly alone in the first place. There is something sacred about being alone, not just in body, but in spirit. Not in isolation or despair, but in that quiet, still place where you begin to see yourself more clearly. It's in these moments, stripped of distraction and performance, that you come face to face with who you really are. And that, my friends, is the beginning of self-discovery. Many people go through life surrounded by others, yet never truly know themselves. They play roles. They follow expectations. They chase approval. But when the noise fades and the crowds go home, they don't know who they are without someone else to tell them. That's why solitude is not just useful. It's essential. It creates the space where you begin to uncover the truth about your heart, your mind, and your calling. When you're alone, you're not being ignored. You are being invited. Invited into a deeper relationship with yourself. Invited to listen, not just to the world around you, but to the world within you. And what you'll find there, if you're willing to look, is a person worth knowing, a person with dreams you've forgotten, a person with wounds that need healing, a person with wisdom and strength that's been buried beneath years of noise and fear. But that discovery doesn't happen by accident. You've got to lean into it. You've got to be willing to ask hard questions in the silence. Who am I when nobody's watching? What do I believe when the voices around me are quiet? What do I want? Not what's expected, not what's safe, but what's true. These are not easy questions, but they are holy ones. They are the kind of questions that can set a soul free. Too many people wait for someone else to come along and give their life meaning. But meaning isn't given to you. It's uncovered within you. You don't find it in someone else's approval or in a list of accomplishments. You find it in the quiet corners of your spirit when you allow yourself to be real, raw, and honest. You find it when you stop running and start listening. And there's something else. When you begin to know yourself, you also begin to love yourself. Not with pride, but with compassion. You begin to see your story through softer eyes. You begin to forgive yourself for what you didn't know then. You begin to celebrate not just who you hope to become, but who you've already survived being. And that love, that self-acceptance, it can only grow in solitude. Solitude isn't selfish. It's preparation. It's the soil where purpose takes root. It's where you discover not just what you want to do, but who you were created to be. When you stop living for the applause, you start living for the truth. And truth, my friends, will set you free. But you've got to be quiet long enough to hear it. You might feel uncomfortable at first. You might feel restless, bored, maybe even a little afraid. But I want you to know that those feelings are part of the process. They're not signs that you're doing it wrong. They're signs that you're finally showing up. That you're peeling back the layers, digging deeper, growing roots. In the stillness, you'll start to remember things that matter. You remember who you were before the world told you who to be. You'll remember the things that brought you joy before you traded them for responsibility. You'll remember that your worth was never tied to how busy you are, how many people like you, or how much you achieve. You'll remember that you belong not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And once you taste that truth, once you feel the power of truly knowing yourself, you'll never look at solitude the same way again. You'll stop fearing those quiet moments. You'll start seeking them. Because they're no longer empty. They're full. Full of insight. Full of healing. Full of the kind of peace the world cannot give and cannot take away. You are not here to live a life that someone else scripted. You are not here to wear a mask that pleases the crowd but suffocates your spirit. You are here to live honestly, to walk humbly, to grow deeply. And that begins when you learn to sit in your own presence without flinching, without performing, without needing to be anywhere else but here. If you want to know your purpose, if you want to walk in truth, if you want to love others well, you've got to start by knowing the person in the mirror. There is a power in being present with yourself, in embracing the moment you find yourself in without running away or wishing it were different. So often, we live our lives as if we're somewhere else, rushing to the next task, worrying about the past, or anxious about the future. And in doing so, we miss the beauty, the peace, the very life that is unfolding right here and now. But when you learn to be fully present with yourself, when you practice mindfulness in your solitude, something miraculous begins to happen. You start to build a relationship with your own soul. Being present means more than just sitting quietly or being physically alone. It means tuning in, really tuning in to the whispers of your heart, the rhythm of your breath, the sensations of your body. It's about noticing the world around you, but more importantly, noticing the world within you. The feelings, the thoughts, the hopes, and even the fears that rise up when you are not distracted by the noise of life. And though it might sound simple, it is a skill that many of us have lost. When you practice presence, you're telling yourself that you matter, that your inner life is worthy of attention, that your soul is worthy of care. You stop rushing past yourself as if you were just another task on a never-ending to-do list. Instead, you become the caretaker of your own heart, and that changes everything. There are many ways to cultivate this presence. Some find it in meditation, sitting quietly and gently bringing their mind back when it wanders. Others find it in journaling, putting pen to paper to uncover the truths that lie beneath the surface. Some find it in a simple walk where they leave their phone behind and allow themselves to notice the sky, the trees, the sound of their own footsteps. Whatever the way, the goal is the same: to be fully here, fully now, fully you. When you start to practice this, you begin to see yourself more clearly. You become aware of the thoughts that run through your mind, noticing which ones lift you up and which ones pull you down. You start to recognize patterns, emotions, and stories you've been telling yourself that no longer serve you. And with that awareness, you gain the power to change how you relate to yourself and to the world. Presence is also a path to healing. There may be wounds in your heart that you have tried to ignore or hide from. When you practice mindfulness and presence, those wounds come to light. Not to hurt you more, but so you can bring them into the healing light of your awareness. When you hold your own pain with compassion as a loving friend rather than a harsh judge, healing begins. The silence that once seemed empty becomes a sanctuary where your spirit can breathe and mend. This is not easy work. It requires patience, kindness, and persistence. You will find your mind wandering, your heart resisting, your body restless. But keep returning, keep coming back to yourself with gentle curiosity and love. Because the more you do, the more your relationship with yourself deepens. And from that place of inner connection, loneliness loses its power. The world will always offer distractions, phones buzzing, voices clamoring, duties demanding. But you have a choice. You can answer those calls immediately, or you can choose to be present with your own life first. You can choose to listen to the quiet that teaches you who you are beyond your roles and responsibilities. You can choose to rest in the presence of your own spirit and find there a wellspring of peace that no external circumstance can steal. And this presence doesn't isolate you. It connects you. When you are rooted in your own inner life, you become more authentic in your relationships. You bring yourself fully to others, not as someone seeking to be filled, but as someone whole and grounded. Your connections become deeper because you are no longer afraid of being alone. You carry within you a steady presence that can hold both silence and conversation, both solitude and community. Friends, this is a journey worth taking. To learn to be present with yourself is to step into a deeper life, one where you are not at war with your own company, but at peace with it. It's where you find that the stillness is not empty, but full of life, full of grace, full of the love that has been there all along. So I encourage you to slow down, to breathe deeply, to listen closely, to be present with yourself today and every day. Because when you learn to be present, you learn to be truly alive. And in that presence, loneliness loses its hold. There is a deep and lasting strength that comes when you learn to sustain yourself emotionally, when you become your own source of comfort, encouragement, and joy. In a world that so often encourages us to seek validation, approval, and happiness from others, learning to stand firm within yourself can feel like a radical act. Yet it is essential. If we depend solely on external sources for our emotional well-being, we build our lives on shifting sand. But when we cultivate a self-sustaining emotional world, we plant deep roots that no storm can uproot. We were not made to live emotionally dependent on constant reassurance or company. There is a quiet power that emerges when you recognize that your feelings are valid. Not because someone else agrees, but because you honor them yourself. It's easy to dismiss your own pain or joy, to wait for others to tell you it matters. But true emotional maturity begins when you learn to acknowledge and embrace your feelings without needing outside confirmation. This does not mean closing yourself off from others or rejecting connection. Far from it. It means you come to the table whole, not hungry. It means you can share your joys and your struggles, but you do not rely on others to create your sense of worth or happiness. You become your own best friend. The one who listens when no one else is around, who speaks words of kindness to yourself when the world is harsh, who holds your own hand through the darkest nights. Building this emotional self-sufficiency requires intention and practice. It begins with learning to be present with your feelings, even the difficult ones. Too often, we push away sadness, anger, or fear, afraid they will overwhelm us. But when you turn toward these feelings with courage, you find that they have messages to teach you. They are not enemies, but guides, showing you where healing is needed, where boundaries must be set, or where you need to grow in compassion. You can learn to comfort yourself as a mother comforts a child, gentle, patient, and tender. You can offer yourself encouragement as a coach encourages a player, steady, hopeful, and truthful. You can give yourself permission to feel joy fully, without guilt or hesitation. When you cultivate this inner emotional world, your spirit becomes a sanctuary, a place where you can rest and be renewed, no matter what storms rage outside. This self-sustaining emotional world also means finding joy in your own company. It means discovering the simple pleasures that fill your heart, reading a good book, walking in nature, creating something with your hands, or simply sitting in quiet gratitude. These moments become sources of delight and nourishment that do not depend on anyone else's presence or approval. They remind you that your happiness is not a gift to be given or taken away, but a treasure within. You may wonder, how do I start? How do I build this emotional independence when I've spent so long leaning on others? The answer begins with small steps. Start by noticing your feelings without judgment. When you feel lonely, say to yourself, I see you, loneliness. I will hold you tenderly. When you feel joy, celebrate it quietly within your heart. When you face disappointment, remind yourself that your value is not shaken by one setback. Each time you do this, you strengthen the muscle of emotional self-reliance. And remember, this journey is not about perfection. There will be days when the waves of doubt or sadness threaten to pull you under. That's natural. Even the strongest among us need rest and renewal. The difference is that when you build this inner world, you have a safe place to return to. You have a foundation that cannot be shaken by external storms or shifting circumstances. Living in this way transforms how you relate to others. When you are emotionally self-sustaining, you enter relationships as a giver, not a taker. You love not because you need to be loved, but because you choose to love freely. You listen not to fill your own emptiness, but to genuinely care. This kind of love is stronger, more resilient, and more deeply fulfilling. It is the kind of love that builds lasting bonds, not fragile dependencies. And perhaps most importantly, cultivating this inner emotional strength brings peace. Peace not just in moments of solitude, but peace that walks with you through life challenges. Peace that says, I am enough. I am held. I am whole. It is a peace that the world cannot give and the world cannot take away. So I urge you to begin this journey of building your own emotional sanctuary. Be kind to yourself. Listen to your heart. Embrace your feelings. Celebrate your joys. Comfort your sorrows. And in doing so, you will find a well of strength that carries you through all seasons of life. When you learn to sustain your own emotional world, you will never be truly alone. There is a great temptation in our world to fill every quiet moment with company, to surround ourselves with others not simply for connection, but to fill an emptiness that we misunderstand. We often believe that to be alone is to be lacking, that we need a constant stream of voices, faces, and distractions to feel whole. But the truth, my friends, is far deeper and far richer. It is not about the quantity of companionship, but the quality of connection. We were created for relationship, that is true. To love and be loved, to walk alongside one another through life's joys and sorrows. That is part of what it means to be human. But relationships are meant to nourish our souls, not to fill a void left unhealed inside. When we seek companionship merely to escape loneliness, we run the risk of mistaking presence for connection, noise for conversation, distraction for intimacy. Meaningful relationships are born out of wholeness, not neediness. When you come to a friendship or a family bond, as a person who is already complete in yourself, you bring a gift to that relationship, a gift of presence, authenticity, and generosity. You are no longer reaching out in desperation, but extending your hand in love. You listen not because you need to hear your own voice echoed back, but because you genuinely care. You love not because you are trying to be loved, because you are able to give freely. This is why it is so important to learn to be comfortable in your own company first. When you learn to stand alone without loneliness, you become stronger in your relationships. You do not cling or clinginess. You do not lose yourself in another to feel safe. Instead, you walk beside others in freedom, allowing space for both your own growth and theirs. Too many people stay in unhealthy relationships simply because they fear being alone. They settle for less than they deserve, thinking any company is better than none. But those relationships, born out of fear and need, often deepen loneliness rather than heal it. The absence of meaningful connection is not filled by mere presence. It takes time, courage, and honesty to build bonds that truly satisfy the heart. Meaningful connections require us to be vulnerable, to show up as we are, with our imperfections and our hopes, our doubts and our dreams. This vulnerability is possible only when you have a strong foundation within yourself. When you know who you are, when you are at peace with your own company, you can afford to be real with others. And when you are real, others feel safe to be real with you. Relationships also require discernment. It is not enough to simply have people around. We must choose those who truly nourish us. Surround yourself with those who inspire you to be better, who accept you as you are, who walk with you through the storms without judgment. These are the connections that transform loneliness into belonging. And sometimes, choosing meaningful connections means letting go of those that drain you, those who demand too much, who bring negativity, who leave you feeling smaller rather than uplifted. This is not a rejection of people, but an act of love toward yourself. It is recognizing your worth and refusing to settle for less than what your spirit needs. In nurturing these quality relationships, you will discover a deeper joy and a truer sense of community. You will find that being with others is not about escaping yourself, but about sharing your fullness. You will experience conversations that feed your soul, laughter that lifts your spirit, and silence that feels comfortable because it is shared. And remember, it is okay to have seasons where solitude is your closest companion. Not every moment needs to be filled with people. Some of the richest relationships begin after a time of being alone, after you have gathered your own strength and clarity. Solitude prepares you to love more fully and to connect more deeply. When you learn to value meaningful connection over constant companionship, you free yourself from the chains of loneliness, disguised as business or crowd. You open your heart to relationships that are rooted in truth and grace. You create a life where you are neither lonely nor dependent, but whole, connected to others and to yourself in equal measure. So, I invite you to seek out those who will walk with you in love, to cherish the quality of your connections more than the quantity. Let your relationships be a source of strength, not a crutch. And remember that your greatest companion in all seasons of life is the person you see when you look in the mirror. A true connection begins within.